And welcome back to the NFLNU podcast. I'm your host, as always, Hayden Vassar. Uh, we've made it through week 14, people. This is a big week for the NFL in a lot of ways. And we're going to recap it all, every single game. All, 1, 2, 3, 4, 15 of them. I had to count because I wasn't sure. Because we did Thursday Night Football already, so that just left 15 games between Sunday and Monday night. That's a lot to recap at once. So, just a heads up before we get into this. We're going to pay some, let's say, less attention to certain games. For instance, there were a couple blowouts, and we normally don't give those as much time as other games to begin with, but this week we're also going to start doing that more with lesser games like, for example, Carolina and Atlanta. Those two don't have a lot going on right now, and we'd like to spend more time talking about teams like New England, Houston, Tennessee, Baltimore, New Orleans, San Francisco, Green Bay, Minnesota, Seattle. Teams that are going to be storylines moving forward. And, Carolina and Atlanta seasons, for example, are going to be ending here in about 3 weeks. So we're going to spend, we're still going to talk about those games and what happened and what it means. But we're going to spend a little less time than normal on them, if that makes any sense. So without further ado, let's get into today's show. We went 11-5 in our picks, so another great weekend for that. At least there's that, 11-5, picking up steam going into the postseason. So let's start off with the game of the weekend and game of the year, in my opinion. Nothing's going to top what we saw this weekend. San Francisco at New Orleans. San Francisco wins an absolute shootout in New Orleans as Robbie Gould, the San Francisco 49ers kicker, hits a 30-yard field goal as time expires to give the 49ers a 48-46 win at the buzzer in New Orleans. An absolute back-and-forth showstopper affair from beginning to end. And, oh my gosh, it was just back and forth. Neither team really had an edge until the final, seconds, literally. On Friday I said this game is a big litmus test for both of these teams, and in their own way, I said it was a litmus test for New Orleans to prove that, they are one of the bigger dogs in the NFC, and they passed that test with flying colors, in my opinion. They proved that they're not just one of the best teams in the NFC. They proved to me that they're one of the best teams in the NFL. There were questions about whether, they could score a lot of points and really, put up big numbers, and they went out there and shredded the vaunted 49ers defense like they were Swiss cheese. Drew Brees had 5 total touchdowns in this game, looked like his old self, showed that old man still got some life left in that cannon of an arm and whatnot. So in that regard, I think the Saints, showed that they're one of the better teams in the NFL this past Sunday. Even though they lost, I have a further respect for them knowing that, okay, I think we know that the Saints can be considered in that upper echelon with San Francisco and Baltimore in this conversation at this point in time. Then to the 49ers, I said this would be a good test in case they fall to the wild card, that they could go on the road and have a good performance against a good team. And they walked into New Orleans, into the Death Dome, with Drew Brees having the best game of his season, undoubtedly, by far, and they found a way to win. When their defense did not play well, when their defense gave up a season-high 46 points and 500 total yards? It was ridiculous. They found a way to win, and that's important. So just in case they get that wild card, just in case they slip back to the 5 seed, they have the confidence going forward. Hey, we won in New Orleans in week 4. We could do it again if it comes to that. But man, I really think the big storyline out of this game, in my honest opinion, is that Jimmy Garoppolo, the 49ers quarterback, can no longer be considered just a game manager. That dude put on an absolute clinic. Here's his final stat line. You ready? 26-35. For 349 yards, 4 touchdowns, had 1 interception. I think that was in the second half, and got sacked 3 times. That is just really great, and I just feel like he's getting better as the season goes on. And I've been waiting for people to finally put to bed this storyline that, oh, he's just a game manager. That's how you beat the 49ers. You got to force him to throw the football. Saints had him throw the football, and he threw 4 touchdowns and almost 350 yards on them. And the Saints defense, it isn't great, but it's good. It's solid, and it's shown it can be really good at times. So for Jimmy to go out there and throw those 4 touchdowns, that was really great. And, Emmanuel Sanders, the 49ers wide receiver, had a really good day too. 7 catches, 157 yards, 1 touchdown catch. Oh, and by the way, he threw a 35-yard touchdown pass on top of that to, I think it was Raheem Mostert. I think that's who it was. But man, this was just... this was, like I said, the Saints defense was good. Not great, but good. But the 49ers defense, in my opinion, is the best in the league. And they're really good. And that's been chronicled the entire season. But this was just one of those games where it doesn't matter who the defenses are. They're not doing anything in this game. Here's the total numbers from both sides by the end of the game. You ready for this? At the end of the game, 94 total points were scored in the game. And 981 total yards by both teams. Think about that. We almost had 1,000 total yards in this game alone. That is not indicative of either of these defenses whatsoever. These quarterbacks just put on a clinic that went back and forth, and it was an absolute show to watch. In fact, this happened at 1 o'clock Eastern when there were 8 other games going on at the same time. And normally I watch the Red Zone channel to, try to keep up with all the games. Right at about halfway through the second quarter, I said, nah, forget this. And I just flipped over and solely watched this game because it was so insanely entertaining. How it became, oh, the Saints scored a touchdown. Oh, 49ers scored a touchdown. Oh, the Saints scored a touchdown. Oh, the 49ers scored a touchdown. Oh, the Saints scored a touchdown. Oh, the 49ers scored a touchdown. It was just truly incredible theater that I don't think we'll forget anytime soon. And like I said, I think this is game of the year. By far, this is the best game we've had this season, and I don't think we're going to get one that tops this. Truly great theater. Drew Brees' final stat line, to wrap this up real quick, 29 of 40 for 349 yards, 5 touchdowns. That's his entire stat line. And you know what I didn't say there? In case you weren't paying attention, he did not get sacked once. This 49ers defensive line did not sack him once in this game. That's the first time all season that they haven't gotten a sack in a game. That's absolutely impressive by that Saints offensive line. Now, maybe it's because, he was getting the ball out quicker, or you could argue something like that. I'm just saying that is very, very impressive that they did not get a sack. Michael Thomas, Saints wide receiver, 11 catches, 134 yards, and a touchdown. So to put a bow on this one, as we sit here and hyped up how great this game was, this was costly for both teams in certain regards. Let's start with New Orleans, okay? New Orleans came into this game, they were the number 1 seed in the NFC. If the playoffs started, before these games on Sunday, New Orleans would have had a home field advantage throughout the playoffs and a first-round bye. But now because they lost, they slipped all the way to, what was it, the 3rd seed? Yeah, they slipped all the way to the 3rd seed, behind Green Bay. That is an absolutely massive blow to their playoff standings. They went from a team that was, looking at getting a first-round bye with a 1 or 2 seed to now, if things end right now, they're going to be playing on Wild Card Weekend. That is absolutely massive for New Orleans. So that was their big takeaway from this game in the loss. But for the 49ers, they won, but it was a costly win. Because Richard Sherman, one of their star defenders, hurt his hamstring, jacked it up. And head coach Kyle Shanahan said he's probably going to be out for a couple weeks. So that's a big blow to their defense. But even more importantly, their starting center, whose name is escaping me right now, and I didn't write it down, and that's on me. Their starting center tore his pectoral in this game. And he's done for the year. So I know they've overcome offensive line injuries earlier in the season. But now when they're getting into the nitty-gritty of a season where every game matters, losing your starting center for the rest of the year is an absolutely massive deal. So the 49ers regained their throne on top of the NFC. They're back in the number 1 seed. They've got some room to breathe at the top now, and it was costly for them, though. It was very costly. Once again, 49ers win the game of the year, 48-46. Oh, it was beautiful. So, if high-scoring offense, we're going to move on. If high-scoring offense, I had to say we're moving on. Nice little transition. If high-scoring offense isn't your thing, if that doesn't, catch your interest, might I interest you in low-scoring defensive game? The other big game that happened at 1 o'clock Eastern at the same time, Baltimore at Buffalo. Baltimore wins this one 24-17. Baltimore improves to 11-2 on the year. Buffalo falls to 9-4. But man, Buffalo gave them some trouble in this one. Oh man. Bills defense put on an absolute clinic in Buffalo. They held the Ravens to a season low 257 total yards in this one and forced the Ravens to punt 7 times. Now you're thinking, why are you talking about number of times a team's punt? You've never talked about that. Why are you talking about that now? Here's why this is important. If you've watched the Ravens at all this year, you know they rarely ever punt. It's not their thing. They're either going for it or they're not. Simple as that. You know how many times they punted this season coming into the game against Buffalo? 24. 24 times this year they punted. That is an incredibly low number. So to think that the Bills forced them to punt 7 times in this game is incredible. Astronomically incredible. We gave the Ravens a bit of a free pass last week because they played in that monsoon against the 49ers. That maybe limited their team. Well, there was no bad weather in this one. There wasn't, and the Bills' defense put them on lockdown. Now, granted, Lamar Jackson still had 3 touchdowns and still looked like an unstoppable force of nature, making Bills defenders look stupid trying to tackle him. Especially on, I think it was their 3rd touchdown of the day when Lamar's scrambling out of the pocket right at the goal line, and a defender gets in his way to stop the run, and Lamar just quickly ad-libs a pitch play to his tight end who wasn't even expecting it for a touchdown. It's like, oh my goodness. Even when the Bills did everything right, they got beat. It's impossible to defend this guy. The Bills defense really had a great game, and they showed how good they could be. They limited the big plays, and they held Lamar Jackson in check, and I got nothing but praise for what that Bills defense showed me. But the problem with the Bills, and it's been a storyline all year, was, their defense can play great, but their offense sometimes leaves a lot to be desired. And that was kind of the case for the majority of this game. I mean, at one point, the Ravens are up 24-9 in the second half. And you're thinking, oh, it's over. This Ravens defense is going to play downhill. It's a wrap. It's done. It's over. Josh Allen and that offense mounted a really great big boy touchdown drive in the second half to make it a 7-point game. They got a big touchdown. I think it was to Cole Beasley. It was their only touchdown of the day, if I remember correctly. And they got the 2-point conversion. I think Cole Beasley scored that one too. And it made it a 7-point game. And I just absolutely loved the Bills' grit and tenacity that, they were down double digits to... Was it double digits? Yeah, it was double digits. I can't math. So it was they were down double digits to the biggest dog in the yard in the NFL this season, who has a really good defense. The Ravens have a great defense. But they showed no fear, no intimidation. And even on a day where their offense didn't play well, they took it straight to the Ravens. And I got nothing but respect for seeing that from the Bills. A lot of fight and tenacity from them, being down big in the second half. It showed me a lot of grit. But, they got that touchdown. They cut it to a 7-point game. And that was their only touchdown of the game, like I mentioned. But after that, the Ravens defense then proceeded to put the clamps back down on the Bills offense and didn't let them get nothing going. An example of how the Ravens defense pushed the Bills around. Josh Allen, the Bills quarterback, sacked a season-high 6 times. Most he's been sacked all season. Uh, it's here. Bills had 209 total yards. That's not good, man. I know the Ravens defense is getting better each and every week, and they're starting to be really considered to be one of the better defenses in the league. But, Bills, you got to be better than this. You got to do more than just score one touchdown. Uh, you're going to have to show me more than just this. Because, that 3-week stretch where the nation started to fall in love with the Bills, it's real, man. I think this Bills team can be really good and win a playoff game. I really think they can. But their offense is going to have to be more consistent. Even in a loss, I still somehow gained more respect for them in a loss. I knew they weren't going to beat the Ravens, but still. They showed me feisty tenacity and refused to quit against the best team in the NFL. And I love it. I truly love it. But for the Ravens, the good news for them is they now sit alone atop the hill in the AFC with the number 1 seed. Because the Patriots have now lost 2 in a row, so everything is looking great if you're a Baltimore Ravens fan. Let's get you some final stat lines to close this one out. Lamar Jackson, 16 to 25 for 145 yards, 3 touchdowns, like I mentioned, 1 interception, 1 sack. The rare Lamar Jackson turnover. Had one of those in this game. You don't see him very often, but Bills got one in this game. Showed how good their defense was playing. I'm telling y'all. Josh Allen finished the game 17 to 39, 146 yards, 1 touchdown, 6 sacks, like I mentioned. Bills offense, you got to show me more. You got to show me more. I believe in you. I'm back on your hype train. You just got to show me more. Once again, Baltimore wins a defensive-heavy battle, 24 to 17, and we're moving on. Back to the NFC South, people. The aforementioned Carolina at Atlanta game. Atlanta wins 40 to 20. Oh my gosh. Atlanta improves to 4-9 on the year. Carolina falls to 5-8. Carolina was officially eliminated from playoff contention this Sunday. Shocker. Atlanta once again blows out Carolina. Remember, because they blew them out like a month ago. After a one-sided second half. So when I say that, you got to know that in the first half, it was, low-scoring affair in the first half. When I say that, it was 13 to 10 in favor of Atlanta at halftime. And you're thinking, 13 to 10? How the heck did that final score happen? Well, it started because Carolina got the ball to start the second half. Kyle Allen comes out, takes a snap, looking to throw, and off of his blind side, which means the side he can't see from his behind, with his back, comes Vic Beasley. Vic Beasley then proceeds to smack the ever-loving daylights out of Kyle Allen. Kyle Allen fumbles the ball. Atlanta recovers. They score on their ensuing drive, and that kickstarts a 27 to 10 run for the Falcons in the second half, where it just felt like everything was going right for them. The whatever the Falcons wanted, they got. Matt Ryan had a really great day. 20 of 34 for 313 yards, 3 touchdowns, 1 sack. They got their running game going. They had one of their longest touchdown plays in Falcons history, if I remember correctly. A 93-yard catch-and-run touchdown run by one of their receivers who I can't pronounce that name, so I'm not even going to try. They had 461 total yards of offense. Whatever the Falcons wanted to do, they could do it. This Panthers defense went from, being just bad against the run and, average to above average against the pass to just being awful on all accounts under, interim head coach Perry Falwell. And, you can't blame them for that because, they just fired their head coach. So, a lot's in flux right now, so you really can't get a good read on the Panthers. I'm just saying their defense went from bad to somehow worse after a coaching change. Don't often see that. And you know what? Speaking that the Panthers defense was bad, their offense didn't do much better. They had 4 turnovers in this game, 3 of them from Kyle Allen, who finished the day 28 of 41 for 293 yards, 1 touchdown pass, 2 interceptions, and a fumble, and 5 sacks. He also rushed 6 times for 24 yards and a rushing touchdown. It was just a completely one-sided affair in the second half. It just wasn't fair. Falcons felt like they could score at will at times. It just was not fair. The Falcons were able to move the ball in every phase, passing, rushing, especially in the running game, that really hasn't been there for the vast majority of the season for the Falcons. They had over 100 rushing yards in this game. Just ran up and down this Panthers defense. It was incredible. And their defense played really well, like I just mentioned. It was just a complete team win for the Falcons, once again blowing out the Panthers for the second time in, a month? Whew, how the mighty have fallen in Carolina. I mean, really think back to it. Like a month ago, we were talking about the Panthers as a frisky playoff team, and now they're 5-8 and have lost, 4 or 5 straight? Oh, man, how the mighty have fallen. So, like I said, we're not going to spend too much time on a game like this. Once again, Atlanta wins a blowout in the second half, 40-20. And just got to wonder, like we mentioned on Friday, Kyle Allen had a really bad performance in this one. If he has another one, maybe we see rookie Will Grier from the University of West Virginia this season. It's worth keeping in mind. Once again, Atlanta wins 40-20, and we're moving on to another blowout. And honestly, the most surprising result, not just this weekend, but maybe the most surprising result of the year. Denver-Houston, people. Denver wins a blowout, 38-24. Denver improves to 5-8 on the year and gets their biggest win of the year, undoubtedly. And Houston falls to 8-5 in just an absolute mind-numbing loss. Now, you look at the score and you see 38-24, and you're thinking, can you really call that a blowout? They only won by 14. That score is not indicative of what this game was, my friend. If you did not witness what happened in this game, you need to pause this podcast, go look up the highlights, watch them, come back, and we'll talk about it. Because what happened in this game was absolutely mind-boggling. You got this lowly Broncos team who's bringing in rookie quarterback Drew Lock, making his first road start, going to Houston to play a team that just knocked off the Patriots in Sunday Night Football. Texans are flying high. They're ready to, really make their mark on the playoff picture. And they just come out flatter than a pancake. Nah, flatter than a cutting board. This team was flat. And the Broncos took advantage. And Drew Lock, I cannot stress this enough, made some beautiful, I'm talking beautiful passes in this one. It's bad when Noah Fant, their tight end who couldn't even catch a cold a couple weeks ago, is tearing up your defense. Drew Lock looked absolutely amazing. 3 first half touchdown passes by Drew Lock. Had almost 300 passing yards at halftime. The stat line he had at halftime would be a good total game for most quarterbacks. He was playing that well. It was incredible. I'm talking, it was maybe the most one-sided half of football we've seen this season. The Broncos led 31-3 at halftime. 31-3. This team has been completely different with Drew Lock in there. And I know it's a small sample size. I know it's only 2 weeks. But take this into account. For the vast majority of the season, weeks 1 through 12, okay? The Broncos are one of the worst teams in the NFL at converting on third downs. That's usually a sign, that they're a bad offense, okay? You with me so far? Weeks 1 through 12 when they had Brandon Allen and Joe Flacco at quarterback. Weeks 13 and 14 with Drew Lock at quarterback. In that small sample size, the Broncos are a top 5 offense in converting third downs. That shows you that he is a difference maker on that offense. I'm not saying that they're suddenly a great team now, or even a good team. I'm just saying that these last 2 weeks, they have a quarterback in there that's not, holding them back. Let's keep it real. Drew Lock looked absolutely incredible. Turned that Texans secondary into mincemeat. And, it wasn't all just him making great throws. To be completely and brutally honest, there were a lot of broken tackles and a lot of, one-armed, half-assed tackles in this one where you just see, like, for example, I remember Noah Fant play where, if I remember correctly, he caught the pass on the sideline and broke a tackle or two on a 20-yard scamper. It was ridiculous. It's like, Texans, come on. I know your secondary's not that good, but come on, man. Where was this team that gave Tom Brady fits a week ago? Now you're letting Drew Lock tear you up for over 300 passing yards? Drew Lock finished the day 22 of 27, 309 passing yards, 3 touchdowns, 1 interception, 1 sack. For the rookie in his second game. Absolutely incredible. And you're thinking, wow, 31-3. What happened in the second half? Well, in the second half, they outscored the Broncos. I was looking through my notes. They outscored the Broncos 21-7 in the second half. You could argue that, maybe Denver took their foot off the throat, or maybe the Texans finally woke up at halftime because everybody was making the joke on TV and on Twitter, can somebody tell the Texans that there's a game going on right now? Because they sure don't seem to act like it. Deshaun Watson finished his day 28 of 50 passes. Oh my goodness. 292 yards, 1 touchdown, 2 interceptions. Got sacked 3 times, and he rushed 6 times for 44 yards and 2 rushing touchdowns. It was a case of too little, too late for the Texans, who, like I said, just came out incredibly flat, and I would even argue almost uninterested in the first half. Like, maybe they came out expecting that the Broncos would just roll over and, accept a loss, but no. Broncos came out and threw 3 touchdown passes on you in the first half. That's what they did. If you were watching this game, I'm serious, you would not be able to tell that this Texans team just came off one of their bigger wins of the season. They were just so incredibly flat. And one last note on Drew Lock, because this is now a Drew Lock appreciation podcast, and I love him forever now. It cannot be stressed enough how great he played. And, you have to keep this in mind, because, if you remember, there was a time, week 3, if I remember correctly, where we oogled and ogled over Daniel Jones and his rookie debut and how he threw for 4 touchdowns and got a win in Tampa Bay, and we were like, this kid's a star. And that was his best game of the year, and he never got anything close to that again. So, we can't expect this kind of great performance from Drew Lock every week. You just hope the kid can mature. Because I'm telling you, for the first time in years, the Broncos had a competent guy at quarterback for one game. For one game, they had a competent guy at quarterback for the first time since, 2015? Oh, man. But speaking to the Texans now, this was an absolutely massive loss for Houston. They came into Sunday with a game lead, 1-game lead in their division, and they were fine with that. But the problem is that they dropped a massive ball in this one with a loss to the Broncos, and because of this loss and what happened in Tennessee's game, that we'll get to here in a little bit, Texans and the Titans are now tied for first place in the AFC South with the records of 8-5. You know what that means? It's no bueno. It is not good for the Texans, because the Texans play the Titans 2 times over these final coming 3 weeks. This was a loss that Houston could ill afford, and they just dropped a massive ball in this one. Once again, Denver wins a blowout 38-24, and Drew Lock is for real, people. Take note. I'm kidding. We'll see how he does next week. Moving on. Washington at Green Bay. Green Bay wins this one 20-15. Green Bay improves to 10-3 and are now the 2nd seed in the NFC. Hey, there's that, Green Bay. And Washington falls to 3-10. Green Bay finds a way to win an ugly, sloppy game as Washington pulls another head-scratching move with an injured quarterback. Score was close, but it didn't feel like it, though. It just didn't feel like it. So, Green Bay rode their run game and their run game to victory. Aaron Jones had a really great day for them. 16 rushes for 134 yards. one rushing touchdown on a day where Rodgers and that offense just felt out of sync. Let's call a spade a spade. Aaron Rodgers went 18 to 28 for 195 yards, one touchdown, four sacks. Not that good of a day. And to be honest, doesn't it feel like the Packers are just off? Like doesn't it feel like they're not exactly clicking? I'm not sure what it is, and I've heard a couple people talk about it on TV, and they can't name it either, and I know I can't either. It's just when you watch them, they just feel off, and I don't know what it is. We talked about them earlier in the season that they could be a Jekyll and Hyde offense. Well, I don't even know what offense they are now. I know they rely a lot on their run game, but it just feels off. Thankfully they had Aaron Jones, who had his third 100-yard rushing game of the season, to really help move the ball. And I just really can't name. I'm gonna keep harping on it until I figure it out, but I just can't name what's wrong with this offense. Because the Washington football's team's defense isn't good. They're not like bottom 3 bad, but they're like below average. They're like right in that 20 to 22 ranked total D area, right around there. So they're below average, but this Packers team really struggled to move the ball and put up 20 points on that defense. This 3-win team's defense? I don't know what is going on with Green Bay, but at least they're still winning. They're finding ways to win, and at the end of the day, that's what matters. At the end of the day, you can call their offense out of sync all you want, but they're 10-3 and they have the number 2 seed in the NFC. That's all that matters. Speaking to Washington real quick, they had an injury-plagued day for certain. Darius Guice, who was finally healthy for an extended period for the first time in his 2-year career. He suffered an injury after 5 carries. It was a serious injury. It sounds like they're shutting him down for the year. Poor Darius Guice, poor guy can't catch a break, it feels like. But I think the major thing is Dwayne Haskins, the Washington quarterback, hurt his ankle big time in this game, and you could tell it was seriously bothering him. And, after everything that happened with Robert Griffin, almost a decade ago now, you would think that, hey, you could see our season isn't going anywhere. This game is meaningless. Maybe don't throw your rookie, supposed to be franchise quarterback, out there with a bum ankle and an offensive line that can't block for him. Maybe don't do that. Maybe protect your rookie like you should have did with Griffin. That was just my thought watching that. I was like, man, I don't want to see them break another rookie quarterback again. I really don't want to watch that again. Dwayne Haskins, he was hampered by the injury, but he almost put up almost an identical stat line to Rodgers. 16 of 27 for 170 yards, 1 touchdown, 1 interception, 4 sacks. You take away that interception, their stat lines are basically identical. So, we're now comparing the Packers' passing offense to the Washington football teams. What is going on here in Green Bay? I just can't put my finger on it, and I don't know what it is. But it's just something seems off, people. It was an ugly, sloppy game where not a lot happened. It's just, I keep watching these Packers games, and I'm just waiting for it to feel like, they belong. And you know what? Looking at their schedule and who they've played so far this season, they really haven't beaten any juggernauts, have they? I mean, they lost to the 49ers in blowout fashion. Who's the Packers' best win? Against the Cowboys? Is that their best win? Really think about it. They lost to the Eagles. I'm really struggling to think of who this Packers team is really beat so far this year. And if they're having to struggle against, and remember, they struggled against the Giants too. That was still a 1-score game in the fourth quarter last week. We got on the Bills really bad for, struggling against these bad teams, and here the Packers are doing it at 10-3. I just don't know what's going on with Green Bay, man. It's bothering me, and I don't know what it is. But once again, Green Bay wins 20-15, and they're 10-3 and the second seed in the NFC, and that's all that matters, baby. That's all that matters. Moving on to another wild shootout. We had two of these at 1 o'clock Eastern, so your head was kind of on a swivel for a little bit there. Indianapolis at Tampa Bay. Tampa Bay wins this one 38-35. Both teams are now 6-7 after the game. Like I said, Tampa Bay wins a wild shootout, and the legend, if you were here with me while I'm recording this, you would see I'm doing air quotes around the word legend. Legend of Jameis Winston continues to grow. This was the ultimate Jameis Winston game. He made some great throws and got a couple touchdowns, but my God, he just cannot help himself with turning the ball over, can he? And I know some of them weren't his fault. I know some of them were tipped and picked off. You ready for Jameis Winston's final stat line? It's a beauty. I promise it's beautiful. You ready for it? 33 of 45 for 456 yards, 4 touchdowns, 3 interceptions. He just can't help himself. We will now officially, when a quarterback throws for 450 yards, 4 touchdowns, and 3 picks, will now be officially called pulling a Jameis Winston. You never want to go full Winston, man. You never want to go full Winston. Oh, man. The Colts capitalized on those turnovers, though. I remember Darius Leonard, if I remember correctly, had 2 interceptions. One of those was a massive pick six in this one. And it helped to get Indianapolis up 24-14 in the second quarter after that aforementioned Darius Leonard pick six. So, those turnovers were really, putting the screws to Tampa Bay early on. In fact, Jacoby Brissett, looked like Jacoby Brissett we saw in the first half of the season where he, had thrown, double-digit touchdowns. He was looking really solid in this one. Went 19-36 for 251 yards, 2 touchdowns, and 1 sack. Marlon Mack played in this game. I was surprised to see him go. I thought he was still healing from the broken hand. He got a touchdown in this one. Colts offense was able to put up points, which is something we really haven't seen them do in a couple weeks. And Jacoby Brissett looked great, like the old Jacoby. Neither team really rushed the ball well. It was kind of, air it out to save your life kind of game. Both quarterbacks just kind of throwing it through the air. I think, if I remember correctly, Tampa Bay scored late to take the lead, and Jacoby got the ball back, and they just couldn't get anything going with it. But it was like the ultimate Jameis Winston game. I can't get over that. How he's going to turn the ball over like 2 times in the first quarter to get to dig into this massive hole, and then he's going to dig them out and make some big plays. Big note coming out of this one, though, was that Jameis Winston apparently suffered a tiny fracture in his hand, according to head coach Bruce Arians. So that'll be something to keep an eye on in case, he can't play going forward. Sounds like he's going to be playing going forward, but speaking of injuries, Tampa Bay also lost Mike Evans. He hurt his hammy, and just like Richard Sherman, it sounds like Mike Evans might be out for a couple weeks. And if Mike Evans is out for a couple weeks, that means his season's done, because Tampa Bay's not going to the playoffs, people. They're so weird, man. Tampa Bay is so weird. You don't want to play them right now. You don't, because they're putting up points on everybody. But they're weird. They're going to throw like 5 interceptions while they throw 6 touchdowns on you. It makes no sense. I was really surprised at how well Jameis, after the interceptions happened, how well he threw the ball in this Colts defense, because, statistically this Colts defense was, slightly above average. We haven't really talked about it much, but, they were floating in that little gray zone of like 11th to 15th in total D in that kind of area. So to see Jameis Winston go out and, throw 4 touchdowns was, kind of impressive. Less so after the interceptions. I'm never going to let this go, people. Tampa Bay is the most wild ride ever, and Jameis Winston is the main reason why. Never go full Winston, man. Once again, Tampa Bay wins a wild shootout, 38-35. It's just hard to quantify that game. It really is. Like, if you go back and watch the highlights, what you're seeing makes absolutely no sense. but it does because it's Tampa Bay. It makes no sense. And we're moving on to another blowout. In all honesty, Detroit at Minnesota. Minnesota wins 20-7. Minnesota improves to 9-4 on the year, and Detroit falls to 3-9-1. And you're probably thinking to yourself, like you did with Denver and Houston, Hayden, how can that be a blowout? They only won by 13 points. This is another instance of a score not being indicative of what happened in this game. On Friday, I said the Vikings defense needs to show me something. Show me that you're good. And they showed me something. They only allowed 231 total yards of offense, got 2 turnovers, 5 sacks, and only gave up 7 points. I don't care who you're playing. That's good. That's how you step up, Vikings defense. That's how you step up. The touchdown came late in the fourth quarter for the Lions. David Blau hit Kenny Golladay in the end zone. But, at that point, it was a 20-0 lead. It was like 2 minutes left. So who out there was really trying, Vikings offense didn't do too much, and when you hear that, you initially think, oh, that means they did bad. That it wasn't. They didn't have a bad day. It was more like a game manager performance by everybody on the offense. They just didn't do too much. Kirk Cousins went 24-30 for 242 yards, a touchdown, 1 sack. Not a bad day. A solid game manager day kind of game. Dalvin Cook didn't have a big game. It was just all about the Vikings defense. And that's important. That is very important that they won this game through defense. Because we know that offense can be good. We know Dalvin Cook can, get like 150 scrimmage yards and a touchdown or 2. We know Kirk Cousins can sling it for 3 touchdowns and Stephon Diggs catch for 150 yards. And we know Kyle Rudolph's a major red zone touchdown threat. We know all of that. What we were really concerned about was that defense, who was coming off an embarrassing performance on Monday Night Football where they gave up over 400 yards to the Seahawks. This was a great first step to building up the confidence for that defense. I know the Lions are bad on offense, and I know David Blau is just a third-string rookie quarterback, so you can't really put much stock in it. But you know what? They came out and they dominated, and that's all that matters. It didn't matter who they went up against. But speaking to now David Blau, he went 24-40 for 205 yards, a touchdown, 2 interceptions, and like I said, 5 sacks. This might have been the Lions' worst offensive performance of the year. It really might have been. Because at one point in every game this season, the Lions have had the lead in a game. This was their first game all season where they didn't have a lead in a game. It was just no production from their offense at all. David Blau was under pressure the vast majority of the game, and they just couldn't get anything going against the stonewall defense of Minnesota. It was just a bad day all around for the Lions. And, when I wrote the notes for this game, this was last night, and I had it written here in my notes, that at this point the Lions fans are just looking forward to the draft. And I went out and did some errands earlier today, and I put it on 97.1 The Ticket here in Detroit. And they're sitting there talking about, okay, here's how the Lions can end up with the number 2 overall pick in the draft. They just have to lose out. The Giants have to win one game. Washington has to win one game. Miami has to win one game. It's sitting here like they did like a 10-minute segment on on this scenario that could get them Chase Young in the draft. Like, the season has spiraled out of control that much for Detroit. They're just looking forward to the draft at this point. Speaking back to the Vikings now, because we're going to wrap this up. I really think the Vikings are the better team in the NFC North. I like them more than I like the Packers. The Packers' defense feels like it has holes in it. Their offense just feels off. And yeah, the Vikings' defense isn't as good as it normally is, but I feel like I have more faith and confidence in them being productive than I do the Packers. And you know what? Maybe it feels like the Packers are going to win the NFC North, but I have more faith in the Vikings winning a playoff game than I do the Packers right now. I just do. Once again, Minnesota, I almost said Miami. Minnesota wins a blowout 20-7. And we're moving on to a game that has a lot of people talking, but not for the reasons you might think. Cincinnati at Cleveland. Cleveland wins this one 27-19. Cleveland improves to 6-7 on the year, just a game below 500 people. And Cincinnati falls to 1-12 on the year. Browns find a way to grind out an ugly, sloppy win over the Bengals. The Browns rode a solid performance by Nick Chubb and a defensive score. They got a pick six in this one to victory on a day where, the rest of their offense did not play very well. Nick Chubb, their running back, like I just said, 15 rushes for 106 yards. And it's a really good day. Baker Mayfield, his quarterback, not so good of a day. 11 of 24, so he completed less than half of his passes. 2 interceptions and 2 sacks. I forgot to write down his yardage, but it wasn't good. I can promise you it wasn't good. The bad Browns resurfaced, and they just barely were able to beat the Bengals. The Bengals were actually the better team in this game. You go and look at every feasible stat from this game, from time of possession, the total yards, the turnover margin, to whatever you want to name, the Bengals had the clear edge. Except for the final score, which was in favor of the Browns. Feels like the most Bengals thing ever. The Bengals outgained the Browns by over 100 total yards. By the end of the game, the Bengals had 451 total yards. The Browns had 333. Like, come on. Usually a team with that, lopsided of total yards will win that game. Unless you're the Bengals. The Bengals also had Joe Mixon rushed for a career high in this game. He had 23 rushes for 146 yards. 1 rushing touchdown. Just wasn't enough. Andy Dalton went 22 of 38 for 262 yards, 1 interception, 2 sacks. It was just ugly, sloppy, almost uninteresting football for a while, I'm going to be honest. But the bad Browns were just... You can't even say they were the better team because they weren't, like I just mentioned, but the bad Browns just did enough to win against a very bad Bengals team. That's the takeaway from this game. But, the main storylines coming out of this game had nothing to do with what happened on the field. Before the game, Jay Glazer from Fox reported that, Cleveland's wide receiver Odell Beckham Jr. has been telling teams that, he wants them to come get him. That he's not happy in Cleveland and that he wants out. So even when the Browns win, they can't go without drama. Like, come on, Cleveland. But the major storyline that's coming out of this game doesn't even involve either of these teams. It involves the New England Patriots. Because a New England Patriots scout that was at the game to do scouting for his team's game that's next week against the Bengals was caught filming the Bengals sideline during the game. Now, if you aren't new to the NFL, I want to wind the clocks back about 12 years when the Patriots were busted for what was known at the time Spygate, where they were caught illegally filming coaches' hand signals. I think it was either during games or during practices, whatever. They were caught filming hand signals to help give them the edge and win games. That was the allegation back then, and it seems like they may have been caught red-handed doing it now. Now, when the Patriots employee was confronted with this, he said he was filming for a show that's produced by the New England Patriots that airs weekly, yada, yada, yada. The only problem is that the internet never forgets. Why that saying is important is because the internet quickly dug back up an old article that said to the tune of when Patriots employees were confronted during the initial Spygate, they had excuses at the ready to say that they were filming a program for the Patriots. So, they get caught filming hand signals again and use their same excuse that they got busted for last time. Again. Now, since we were recording this late Tuesday night, The Athletic and other news agencies have reported as to what the film actually contains that the Patriots employee was caught filming. The Athletic said that it is about 8 minutes of uninterrupted footage that is trained directly on the Cincinnati Bengals sideline, and captures their coaches using gestures and hand signals that they use during games. And it's a not good look. The Patriots have come out and said, that yes, there was something filmed, but if anything, that was on accident. Yada yada yada. It's just a really bad look for a team that's been accused of cheating before in the past twice, is being caught apparently cheating again. And nobody's going to give them the benefit of the doubt because we've been through this once before. So it'll be really interesting to see what happens when the Bengals play the Patriots next Sunday. It's going to be very interesting. Once again, the Browns beat the Bengals. That was how this all started. Browns beat the Bengals 20-7-19, and we're moving on. To an interesting game. Miami at the Jets. The Jets win this one 22-21. Jets improved to 5-8 on the year. Miami falls to 3-10. So let me set the stage for you. Jets are on fourth down. They're down 2 points. Super late in the fourth quarter. Game on the line. And they're staring directly down the barrel of another embarrassing loss to the Miami Dolphins this season. Sam Darnold draws back the pass, throws the ball, falls incomplete. Jets sideline is losing their minds. They think their receiver was interfered with. Well, it goes to video review. It falls incomplete. Remember, there was no flag thrown. There was none of that. Goes to video review. And lo and behold, the very rare review changes the call on the field, and all of a sudden there's defensive pass interference. Something we really haven't seen all year. And it gives the Jets new life. It gives them a first down. And that defensive pass interference call from the review helps set up a 44-yard field goal attempt by Jets kicker Sam Ficken that he makes that wins the game. And Brian Flores, the Dolphins head coach, was rightfully incensed after the game. In fact, he charged the officials after the game. He ran right up to him and squared up to him. It was great. I was laughing so hard. It was odd because, we've seen far more egregious calls not be called, and it just feels like these last 2 weeks, it feels like now they're suddenly, changing what's called on the field after these challenges or reviews, and it just feels like there's no consistency with what the NFL is trying to do. And that's probably why Brian Flores was so frustrated. I mean, when it went to video review, we were all expecting it to, not come back and change what was called on the field. Because that's what they've done for the vast majority of the season. So in a big spot, and what really helped decide the game, they come back and change it. It's a massive deal. People are going to sit there and argue that, this defensive pass interference call cost the Dolphins a game. I don't think that's why they lost the game, in my own opinion, and we'll get into that in a second. But, the NFL just has no consistency with how they call, pass interference anymore. It's become a joke, in all honesty. So the Jets won it, but the reason why the Dolphins lost this game is because of this little nugget right here. Neither offense played well in this game, especially the Dolphins, who set a franchise record in this game for 7 made field goals. Think about that for a minute. The Dolphins scored 21 points in this game and kicked 7 field goals. All of their points came from their kicker. They got to the red zone 6 times and did not score a single touchdown. That's not good. That's really, really not good. They could move the ball really well. Like I said, they got to the red zone. They just couldn't capitalize on it. The Jets defense was able to bend but not break. The Jets offense wasn't much better than the Dolphins. They were stagnant for most of the game outside of a 16-point second quarter. They just had the ball last in a close game and made big plays late and benefited from a call from the officials that we don't see much. The Jets' defense was the real story of this game, and the defensive pass interference call was the big story. Ryan Fitzpatrick went 21-37 for 245 yards, 1 interception, 2 sacks. He was also their leading rusher. I think he had 60 rushing yards in this game. It's never good when Fitzmagic is your leading rusher. Sam Darnold went 20 of 36 for 270 yards, 2 touchdowns, 1 interception, 1 sack. It just wasn't a good, clean game. It was sloppy. It was ugly. Neither offense played good. It was just bad football. You know it's bad when your kicker is your leading scorer. Kicker was the MVP of the game. That's not good. Once again, Jets win a controversial one, 22-21. And we're moving on to the first of our late games. Big one in New England. Kansas City at New England. Kansas City wins 23-16. Yeah, I call that upset. Yeah. Kansas City improves to 9-4. They actually clinched their division, so good for them. And New England falls to 10-3. They've lost 2 straight. Things are getting mighty uncomfortable in Foxborough right now. So, start of Sunday, news story comes out. Hey, there was a mishap. A lot of the gear for the Kansas City players isn't in New England. It somehow got mistakenly sent to New Jersey. How that happens, and how nobody can figure out ahead of time that this is happening until Sunday morning is beyond me. So, it had to be express driven. I can only imagine this truck driver was going hundreds of miles over the speed limit as he barreled down highways to make it to New England on time. He got there, I don't know, what was it, like 30, 40 minutes before kickoff? They barely got there in time to get the players their gear. It was already an odd day to begin with. And it got even odder as the game went on. Because let me clearly state this. Kansas City wasn't perfect in this game. It used to be the adage of you have to be beyond perfect to go into Foxborough and beat the Patriots. Because remember, they've won 21 home games in a row before this game. So you had to go back to like 2017 to the last time they lost a home game. The Chiefs were not perfect. Far from it. But it's really starting to seem like you don't have to be perfect anymore to beat the Patriots at home. It's really starting to feel like that. The big story of this game was the Kansas City's defense. They gave up 278 total yards, only 16 points, and got a turnover. They shut down the Patriots' offense. Or are the Pats doing it to themselves at this point? It's hard to really tell the difference. Either way, I really like what the Chiefs' defense is becoming. Because on a day where Mahomes didn't play his best, he went 26 of 40 for 283 yards, 1 touchdown, 1 interception, 1 sack. Not a bad day, but it's not normally what we get from Mahomes. Last year when he went to Foxborough, he had 3 passing touchdowns and over 300 yards? No, we're close to that in this one. On a day where Mahomes didn't play his best, and on a day where the team racked up 10 penalties for 136 yards, their defense found a way to stand strong and gut out a win. That is something that we couldn't even fathom a couple weeks ago for this defense. But they've really strung together some good, strong performances. And I'm in love with what this defense is becoming. This defense is morphing into a team that can not only make a deep run into January, they're starting to morph into a team that can make a legitimate Super Bowl run, especially if the Patriots are going to keep playing like this. This Kansas City team is starting to become a complete mold, and the offense needs to learn, how to flip on that switch and keep it on. But I am just flat out impressed with this Chiefs defense right now. It is good and it is fun. Now, I just talked about the Patriots offense. Now let's really talk about them for a second. For the Patriots, it was their same old story that's haunted them all season. Their defense can play good and keep them in games, but they just can't get anything going with their offense. It's becoming bad. Oh, they were down, double digits at halftime, and the fans in Foxborough were booing as they came off the field at halftime. Think about that. At the time, they were a 10-2 team, and they were getting booed on their home field. What in tarnation is going on here, y'all? It's ridiculous. Now, I will admit, the Patriots were on the bad end of some bad calls in this game. It was the N'Keal Harry should have been touchdown in the second half, where they said he stepped out of bounds, but he never did. But the Patriots were out of challenges, so they couldn't challenge it on the field. There was another bad call or two in this one that went against them. And Patriot fans, they have a right to be upset about that. But you know what? After about 20 years of them being the benefactors of bad calls going against other teams and it helping the Patriots win a bunch of games and championships, I'm not really too upset about it. I'm really not. I'm going to just say karma's mean. And for one game, for what feels like the first time in 20 years, the refs were finally out to get the Patriots. And it felt great, didn't it? It felt fantastic. Tom Brady continues to not have a good day. Went 19 of 36 for 169 yards, 1 touchdown, 1 interception, 3 sacks. Right now, this Patriots offense isn't good. It's not good enough to win right now. And you know what? It's not good enough to win January football. It's not good enough to win a playoff game. It's just not. The Patriots defense is doing its part. They only held Mahomes to 23 points. And in fact, they only held the Chiefs to 3 points the entire second half. So the Patriots defense was putting in work. It was just being wasted on this offense who can't get anything going. They also got 2 turnovers in this one. The Pats really need to find a solution. Like right now. Because here's the thing. They're only a game up on Buffalo. Yeah, I can hear you rolling your eyes right now as I say that, and what I am insinuating. But they played Buffalo once more this season. It is not out of the realm of possibility that this Patriots team could lose the division and be a wild card team. Because they are not playing good right now, man. They are... And, I can't believe I'm about to say this about a Patriots offense. They're an unwatchable mess. That's what they are. They struggle to do the basic things right now. And the only way they can get their offense moving is with gadget and trick plays. You can't rely on that consistently because teams are going to sniff it out. This Patriots team is not good, man. It is really, really not good, man. Once again, Chiefs go into Foxborough, pull the upset, 23-16. Kansas City's 9-4, clinch the division. And New England is going to have to do something here because if they keep this up, they can seriously be looking at a one and done in the playoffs. Or even worse, a Buffalo Bills AFC East Championship t-shirt, if you know what I'm saying. And we're moving on to, oh, look at that, another blowout. The Chargers of Jacksonville. Chargers win this one 45-10. Oh, Chargers improved to 5-8. Jacksonville falls to 4-9. Oh, they just exploded to blow out the Jags as the Jags continued to sink to new lows. Was this the best Chargers offensive performance of the year? It sure felt like it while watching it. Whatever the Chargers wanted, they got, as this Jags defense continues to just be god-awful. Chargers racked up 525 total yards of offense. Yeah, you heard that right. 525 total yards. You know how much the Jags got? 252. They outgained them by almost 300 total yards. That, my friends, is embarrassing. And you know what? Rivers might have looked the best he's looked all season in this game. You got to remember last week we were talking about him getting benched. You know what he did in this game? 16-22 for 314 yards, 3 touchdowns, 1 sack. That's really good. That's really great. You know what? You know what you didn't hear in that stat line? No interceptions. Not one. Good for you, Phillip Rivers. Austin Eckler, their second-string running back, had a great day. 8 rushes for 101 yards. He also had 4 catches for 112 yards and a receiving touchdown. I almost had a brain fart there. Receiving touchdown. So he had 213 scrimmage yards in this game. Good for Austin Eckler. And, the Jags can't help but be terrible right now. They have now, after this game, received their fifth straight blowout loss dating back to the London game, where that was the last time Gardner Minshew started a game. And he started in this one, and he didn't have a good one. Jags offense was just putrid like it's been these past 5 weeks. 24-37 for 162 yards, 1 touchdown, 2 sacks. And you know what? In this 5-week period, the Jags have been outscored 174-52. I'm going to just let that sit and marinate for a second. I'm really going to say this. No team over these last 5-week period, this 5-week period that we're talking about, has played worse than the Jacksonville Jaguars. They are running at some all-time inept numbers right now. Once again, these last 5 weeks, they have been outscored 174-57. That is very, very bad. You know, no one's playing worse right now, and their offense once again look lost and have nothing to go off of. You know, this Jags team is very bad, and, you know, they just have the feeling of, man, is this team going to blow it all up in this offseason? They're going to fire their head coach and fire a couple front office people? You really got to think about that, man. Like 2 years ago, this team was led by the best defense in the NFL, and they were like 10 minutes away from going to a Super Bowl. And now they're getting blown out, once again, 174-57. Oh, how the mighty have fallen. It was just really awful. And at this point, it feels like it doesn't matter who the Jaguars play. I'm convinced they could put the Bengals out there. At this point, I know that the Jags beat the Bengals earlier in the year, if I remember correctly. But if they play them right now in Cincinnati, I'm convinced the Bengals will blow them out. It's getting that bad. Once again, the Chargers win a blowout 45-10, and Jacksonville is just very, very bad. Moving on to, hey, if you don't like blowouts with lots of yard, how about low-scoring defensive games? I'm talking about Pittsburgh at Arizona. Pittsburgh wins a defensive-heavy matchup, 23-17. Pittsburgh improves to 8-5. Gotta like their wild card chances, people. And Arizona falls to 3-9-1. Oh. Defense and special teams once again guides an undermanned Steelers team to victory. Deontay Johnson returned a punt for 85 yards for a touchdown for the Steelers, and their defense picked off Kyler Murray 3 times, sacked him 5 times, and only gave up 17 points in this game. The Cardinals were able to pull within 6 points late in the game, but they got the ball back late, and on 4th down, Kyler Murray heaved up a desperation pass that got picked off to seal the game for the Steelers. It was just it was a repeat of what we've seen from the Steelers all season long. Their offense really not doing much, and that's what we need to expect, that their offense isn't going to do much. Devlin Duck Hodges went 16-19 for 152 yards, 1 touchdown, 3 sacks. So not a whole lot. It's just about their defense, and their defense is going to find ways to win. Neither offense played well. In fact, putting up almost identical stat lines to each other. Kyler Murray went 20-30 for 194 yards. He had 2 touchdown passes, 3 interceptions, 5 sacks. The Cards just aren't good enough to win these close games right now. And I know there was some tomfoolery with them coming back and hanging around late. I think that's good to build off. Those are good building blocks to show that, hey, this Cardinals team can maybe be something next year when they have more talent. When they have a better offensive line to protect Murray. When they have guys on defense who can do their job, to be bluntly honest about it. Because right now, none of that is working. Their defense can't get the job done, and their offensive line can't protect Murray. If they just had a defense that, could hold on to like a 7-point lead in the 4th quarter, this Cardinals team could seriously be like a 6-win team at this point. They really could. But, Right now, it's just a season of close calls and horrifically bad growing pains. That's the story of the 2019 Cardinals. Close calls and really bad growing pains. You know, the Cardinals were fun for a while. You remember that 3-week period where they were scoring like 25 points a game? They're not fun anymore. They're not fun. But man, did you watch this game? Did anybody watch this game and like hear the crowd? It felt like the crowd was like 95% Steeler fans, and they were in Arizona. Like, come on, man. Have some pride, Arizona. All right. We're going to put a bow on this one real quick because this was another game where not a lot happened. Steelers defense is good enough to win a game in January. I think the Steelers defense is good enough to win a playoff game, even when their offense doesn't play well. Ooh, imagine it. Imagine it. New England versus Pittsburgh, wild card weekend. Oh, I can already see the Steelers winning that game. Book it, people. And we're moving on to the last of our late afternoon games. Tennessee at Oakland. Tennessee wins 42-21. Blew them out. Tennessee improves to 8-5. Look out for the Titans, people. I keep telling you. And Oakland falls to 6-7. So, you're thinking, oh, God, a blowout, man. This must have been Tennessee the whole way. Not exactly. It was actually a very back-and-forth, wild first half. The two teams, traded shots back and forth. There were big downfield shots by Ryan Tannehill to A.J. Brown. I think there was like a 90-something yard touchdown catch and run. The Titans were airing it out all over the place, and there were long, methodical touchdown drives by the Raiders. It was back and forth, shot for shot, keeping pace with each other, and it went into halftime tied at 21. And you're thinking, wow, what a wild first half. It's going to be just like that Saints 49ers game. We're going to get more in the second half. Things changed drastically in the second half as the Titans outscored the Raiders 21-0 in the second half. I said that the Titans were, on Friday, I said the Titans were red hot. They weren't white hot, but they're red hot. They are officially white hot now, people. They had 552 total yards, almost 200 more total yards than the Raiders had. They had a defensive touchdown. A.J. Brown continues to go into a true number one wide receiver. A.J. Brown went 5 catches, 153 yards, 2 touchdown catches. He's a weapon out there, people. And Tannehill had one of the best games of his career. He went 21-27 for 391 yards, 3 touchdowns, 1 interception. This Titans team is flat out dangerous, people. Including Derrick Henry, they also went 18 rushes for 103 yards, 2 rushing touchdowns. Oh my gosh. Everything just feels like it's going right for the Titans right now. They're this big play offense that is, throwing the ball downfield in, bunches. Ryan Tannehill is one of the more productive quarterbacks at throwing the ball down the field. In terms of yards per attempt, if I remember correctly, he's like top 5 since he became the starter. He is a flat-out, almost air raid quarterback at this point, just slinging it all over the yard. And none of it feels fluky. If you didn't know better, some people would come in and say, oh, this is all just luck. They're getting the benefit of the doubt. They're really not that good, and the bottom's going to fall out. If you watch these games, none of this feels lucky. None of this feels fluky. It all just feels, natural and right for the Titans. That, they feel like they've unlocked something within themselves, that they're unleashed with Ryan Tannehill. And it's fun to watch. I can't believe I'm saying that. The Titans are fun to watch, people. Speaking to the Raiders real quick, the Raiders looked really good in the first half. These last couple weeks they've been dead, and we wondered what the heck's wrong with them. Maybe they're only good at home games. Maybe that's what the problem is. But then the second half started and the bottom fell out. And we saw the same lifeless Raiders we've seen for the last few weeks. Derek Carr was having a solid game in the first half. He finished 25-34 for 263 yards, 2 touchdowns, 2 sacks. It just all went away. And I am now ready to say that the Raiders season is officially over. It's done, people. Put a fork in it. They needed this game to stay alive, and They threw it away in the second half. Titans were just too much for them. We're going to go quick here because we're starting to run out of time, but I want to put a bow on this one and say the Titans are damn good right now. They deserve respect. And you know what? I'm going to go a step further. I think right now, the Titans are the best team in the AFC South. I think they're better than the Texans because the Texans are too hot and cold. Too hot and cold. We don't know what we're going to get week to week. We don't know if they're going to beat the Patriots or lose a blowout to the Broncos. We know what we're getting with the Titans. We're getting a great offense that can throw the ball deep downfield and truck you with Derrick Henry. We know what we're getting with them. We're getting a good team. Once again, Titans win a blowout 42-21, and we're moving on to Sunday night football. Seattle at the Rams. Another surprising result, in all honesty. Rams win this one 28-12. Rams improved to 8-5 on the year, and Seattle falls to 10-3. Oh man, Seahawks walked right into a buzzsaw known as the Los Angeles Rams. As the Rams continue this odd escapade of just turning the clock back and looking like the Rams of old. So, at the end of this game, the Rams have racked up over 455 total yards of offense, and it looked absolutely unstoppable in the first half. As this late season of resurgency continues for them, Jared Goff looked, great, and they were just getting guys wide open and getting these massive chunk plays. The Rams have been unleashed, people, and the rest of the NFL should be very scared. Goff looked very solid in the first half, and so did Todd Gurley. Goff finished his night 22-31 for 293 yards, 2 touchdowns, 2 interceptions, and we're going to get to those interceptions here in a second. Because Rams jumped out to a big lead in the first half, and you're thinking, oh my gosh, what are we seeing here? In the second half, Goff threw 2 picks. One, just an interception that didn't lead to anything, but the other one was a 55-yard pick 6 by Quandre Diggs, who came over in that trade from Detroit earlier this season. And that's what kept Seattle in this game, was that pick 6. But, man, when you look at the box score and you watch this game, you slowly realize, oh my goodness, Seattle didn't score an offensive touchdown. That pick 6 was the only touchdown scored by the Seahawks all night. We're going to sit here and praise that the Rams have turned the clock back for their offense. Their defense deserves a massive amount of credit for what they did. Because here's what they did. They shut down a dynamic offense. They got 5 sacks on Russell Wilson, and they only gave up 6 points. That's what the Rams defense did. That is incredible. It does not matter who you are playing against. You could be playing the one-win Bengals, and I know I've been picking on them a lot in this podcast, but just to illustrate my point, you could be playing that team, and if you put up those numbers, that's a great day. We're going to praise you for it. But you did this against a top 5 offense like the Seahawks and Russell Wilson. Bravo, Los Angeles. Bravo. That is magnifico, Los Angeles. Magnifico. They deserve an insane amount of credit for what they did. Tyler Higbee, Rams tight end, 7 catches, 116 yards. I know Todd Gurley had like 95 rush yards, and he had a touchdown in this one. Rams, I don't know what their deal is. It feels like all of their earlier struggles are now gone. And because of this game, the Rams are now back in the wild card conversation, people. They're 8-5, and they're starting to nip at the heels of the other teams. This was a bad day for the Seahawks offense. They could have came in, won this game, and if they had won it, they would have been back in the first seed. But because they lost, the Seahawks fell all the way from the 2nd seed to the 5th seed. And because they lost, the Rams are back in the wild card conversation. The NFC West is not done yet, people. This gave the 49ers more breathing room at the top of their division. And the Rams are suddenly back in it. And I think the Rams play the 49ers next weekend. This is insanity. Seahawks dropped the ball. That's what happened in this game. They dropped the ball. Their offense couldn't get anything going in this game. Russell Wilson finished 22 of 36 for 245 yards, 1 interception, 5 sacks. I can't talk. It was just a bad day for the Seahawks. this Rams team is good, and this wasn't going to be a pushover win. But we were all kind of expecting the Seahawks to roll in this one. And this might have been their worst game that they've had all year from an offensive standpoint. Their defense, it certainly wasn't their brightest moment. It wasn't their worst game, but, this offense, this was probably their lowest moment. This game where they were manhandled by the Rams defense. Once again, Rams win this one 28-12. Rams improved to 8-5. Seahawks dropped the ball and are back as a wild card team. And we're moving on to the last game. Monday Night Football. Giants at Philadelphia. Oh, what a treat this was. Philadelphia wins it in overtime off of a 2-yard touchdown pass to Zach Ertz to cap off a second half comeback to win the game 23-17. Philadelphia improves to 6-7. Giants fall to 2-11. This was an ugly game, man. So first half it was sloppy in the first quarter, almost unwatchable, like most NFC East games. And then in the second quarter, it was almost like switch flipped for the Giants as they put up 17 points in the second quarter. They scored 2 touchdowns, both of them going to Darius Slayton, who finished the game 5 catches for 154 yards and 2 touchdowns. Eli Manning was looking really good in the second quarter. He was making good passes, looking solid. And all of a sudden, Giants are up 17-3 going into halftime. Eli's looking solid. Philadelphia is literally on the ropes, and their playoff hopes are slipping by the wayside. And I'm sitting there watching this like, oh, God, it really is going to happen. Eli's going to doom the Eagles one more time. And all of that is happening, and second half starts, and things flip a little bit. Eagles' offense has been an unwatchable, sloppy, sluggish mess for most of the season, and it was in this game too. In the second half, things change. They start using up-tempo. They start going quicker, and it works. Zach Ertz catches 2 touchdown passes in the second half as the Eagles score 20 unanswered points in the second half in overtime to cap off this win to keep their hopes for the NFC East title alive. It was just an ugly, sloppy game. Neither offense played well, and that cannot be stressed enough. But the Giants just looked absolutely atrocious in the second half and could not get anything going at all. Like I said, Eli had a good stat line going into halftime. At the end of the game, he finished 15 of 30 for 203 yards, 2 touchdowns, 2 sacks. That's really not good. His counterpart, Carson Wentz, 33 of 50 for 325 yards, 2 touchdowns, 3 sacks. Okay. That's solid. Zach Ertz, the aforementioned tight end, 9 catches, 91 yards, 2 touchdown catches. The Eagles actually outgained the Giants in this one. Eagles had 443 total yards of offense. Giants had 276. They had almost 200 more total yards than them. It shows you how bad the Giants were. And the Eagles still struggled to beat that. Eagles' offense is still a very dysfunctional mess, but they tapped into something in that second half. Like I said, they went up tempo. They got more longer, sustained drives going, but it did enough to beat an even worse Giants team. Now, if you didn't watch this game, you're lucky. You didn't subject yourself to this god-awful mess like I did. I do hope that this game sends a message, though. And that message is this. Please, for all that is holy, stop putting the NFC East in primetime games. I mean it. We, as a nation, do not deserve to be tortured like this. This is just awful, man. Kids were watching this, man. Kids were watching this dumpster fire. Oh, it was just bad. Okay, so that's our recap portion. I know we went short in a couple segments, but we had a ton we had to fit in there. We had like I said, like 16 games to talk about today. So we had to fit a ton in there. And that might be how our shows are for the rest of the regular season, skipping over a couple of the smaller ones, talk about the bigger ones. But we made it through. Now, we're going to talk about the last Thursday night football game of the year, people. Yeah, this game is what everybody's been looking forward to. New York Jets at Baltimore Ravens. Jets coming off their win over the Dolphins. They're, feeling somewhat happy, I guess. We didn't talk about it, though, what happened with Le'Veon Bell, because I just now remembered it. I want to fit the story in really quick. Le'Veon Bell was a surprise sudden inactive for the Jets, their star running back, because he apparently had the flu this week, so he couldn't play. So please tell me why. Tell me why. Le'Veon Bell was spotted Saturday night before the game, supposed to be bedridden with the flu, out bowling with family members and friends. Like, how does this happen, man? Come on. I thought it was funny. Might as well mention it. So I want to give this game the same kind of treatment that the NFL commercials have been giving it. You know how they hype up every game where they do the trash talk between the two fans? One for this team, one for that team, and they just do trash talk for like 30 seconds? They did something different for this one. It's a 30-second commercial. It's been on for about a week. Talking about, oh my goodness, how great are the Ravens, the unstoppable future MVP, super mega all-star Lamar Jackson. Just nothing could stop him. He's a juggernaut. Got the Ravens flying high. Yada, yada, yada. That kind of stuff for about 25 seconds. And then about 5 seconds, and he's taking on the Jets Thursday Night Football. Be there. And that's how it ends. They literally crammed the Jets in for all of like 3 to 5 seconds in a 25-second commercial. So I want to give this game that same kind of treatment. So normally I only write about 6 points per preview game. I wrote 1 for this one, and it just says Ravens win. I'm going to give this game the same kind of attention the NFL is. Ravens win. So that's it for our recap show today. And the next time we talk, it will be Friday, where we'll recap this game I just previewed. Ravens win. Well, we'll recap this game I just previewed and preview the rest of Week 15. I had to think about it for a second. Yeah, Week 15. Yeah, getting down to the nitty-gritty of it, folks. So thanks for stopping by, and I'll talk to you Friday. Bye.